Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, our 55 is back in pieces. I've done a couple of tanks worth of dyno testing on this saw already, and we're back into it for more. When I was building this, I ran into a couple of problems. We're using the steel 034 piston, and I heavily modified it, opened up the windows into the bottom ring groove. I managed to drop 12 grams of weight off of this piston, and so it's about 12-14 grams lighter than even what the stock piston was. Cut the top, notched the intake. So we set this piston up for cylinder number 1 here. And when we swapped to cylinder number 2, we ended up with a good bit of extra intake. We're at 87 or 174 degrees intake duration, which, you know, that's plenty plus, but it still starts, still idle, still spools up good. The problem is at bottom dead center, we had this lower ring dropping into the intake port, which normally not a problem, but I have opened these windows up to where it's leaking charge towards bottom dead center through the ring groove into the intake port. All sorts of extra spit back, we're losing pressure, and I don't know if it's actually hurting anything, because as you've seen, well, I'll put up the cut videos, you let me know what you think. Definitely runs good, pretty strong motor, and it even put up good dyno numbers. But I think we can get a little bit more. So, what I did is I turned up an aluminum ring to fit right in this groove, and we're gonna weld this ring in, just a couple spots on the skirt. I'll polish it in, blend it smooth. We want to avoid messing up this top ring groove. We still need the top ring to do its thing. So if this wild idea doesn't happen to work out, I do have a stock piston we could swap in. But let me get this installed. I'll show you what it looks like. Use some JB Weld to epoxy the block on. It is also bolted under those 2 spots. During our first run, we had some cracking of the JB Weld, so I ground that out and reapplied more. And here's what we have. I tried to scoop the transfers as much as I could. We raised, widened, lowered everything on the intake. And we raised and widened the exhaust. This is currently set at 103 on the exhaust, 128 on the transfers, and like I said, 87 on the intake. Squish 24 thousandths. And I wanted to show you, this is the first cylinder we laid out. Let me see. I poked through the cylinder right there when I was machining to fit the intake block. And as thin as that got, I didn't want to risk it. So, you can see here's where I drilled it. And I had one other, you can see the through bolt in the other cylinder. Drilled and tapped to where we could bolt that block on. And it's held on with the bolts and epoxy. But with that hole already through, I didn't feel like playing with the plating issues, so we scrapped it, went to plan B, and doing that messed up our timing numbers a little bit, but we'll see what we can do. So here's our ring all installed. Just plan on putting some tack welds on the lower part of this skirt here to hold the ring in, make sure there's no high spots, and then I'll finish blending it in over here and here. Since the port's smaller than the skirt, it shouldn't be able to pop out and go anywhere. But this is one of those things I've never tried before, so I wanted to give it a shot. I was just going to try and put a tack in here and a tack in here in between the groove to seal it off. But somebody suggested to try the aluminum ring to actually fill the whole thing. So that's the method we're going to go with. So let's cross our fingers and hope it works. So it's not the prettiest thing I've ever seen, but it did not mess up the top ring groove at all. Should fill our gap, and we have a couple extra oil retention pockets is all. So I'm going to put it together as it sits, not changing any port time right now, to see if sealing off this intake leak does us anything for power. But let me know what you guys think. Like I said, the first time I ever tried something like this. Definitely not great at welding thin aluminum. Luckily, we didn't get into that top groove at all. So, we'll see how this goes, and then if this doesn't get us the power we're looking for, it'll come back down and we're going to add some more duration to that cylinder. So we have it all together. This is the first time I've done it without the decomp at all. It's fully plugged. So we'll put some fuel in it, make sure it fires off here. There's no clutch or anything on it. I don't like sending those flying. But we'll get the clutch cinched down, put on the dyno, and see if our piston modification made any more power or not. So fingers crossed this cranks over good. Seen lots of other people doing it, so pop it off with something a little hotter. One more. So, I got a spot right there where I just showed you. I wondered why last time I was running it I had some noise. Well, that wire's rubbing on the fins and it wore through. So I need to get that routed a little bit different. So we got our coil wire fixed. We got our piston, the lower ring welded up. And we got our decomp plugged off. So I'll get this fired up. We'll see what kind of power it makes now. Alright, that sounded pretty good, felt pretty good. We averaged just about 6.2 horse and we gained torque all the way from top to bottom. So that was a win. But I really want more. I don't know how else to say it. I want more. So we're going to try giving it just a little bit more duration. I'll probably go up 4 degrees on the exhaust, 4 degrees on the transfers. And what that will do is that'll also give us a little bit more open area on those transfers. We got tons of intake funneling right down in there. And the transfers really are not open all that much at 128. But even with all that going on, we're still making really good power, 11, 11.5 even. So 11, 11.2, 11.5. Way up there up top where we want. But I want to try and just get this blended. I want to try and get this balanced out just a little bit better. We'll give it more transfer, more exhaust to live up with that extra large intake. And if that doesn't work, I might swap back to the factory piston and drop that intake back down, or I guess I could even try epoxying the intake up. But let me know what you think, and we'll see if 4 more degrees on the exhaust and the transfers, really find a second gear with it.